we are back. That was music from the immortal Hulk Hogan, greatest wrestler of all time. Anybody that didn't even watch wrestling obviously knows who Hulk Hogan is. We are back for episode 3, part 3, to wrap up the day here in Mansfield, Texas, where it's still raining. Unfortunately, today it rained so much that my son's baseball game has been canceled. I always look forward to going out to the Mansfield complex and watching him and his team, the Storm, play. A lot of great friends and grandparents and stuff that we enjoy visiting with while we love watching some great baseball. So that's what I'm going to miss out on today, but luckily for me, there's still a lot of playoff basketball on. I'm sure I'll take the family out to eat later and do all those fun things that we do every weekend. So to wrap it up, just a couple announcements real quick before we go through and talk a little bit Major League Baseball. Some exciting news. I'm here to announce that we will do our first live video on Saturday, May 5th on Cinco de Mayo. So that'll give you an opportunity. It'll be a Facebook Live, and that way we can interact with the fans and we can answer questions or any other things. And so really excited about that. Now, moving forward, it won't be live every week, but we'll do different spot dates and try to do that as well, just so we can make it a little more interesting. Hopefully, too, we're working on getting some special guests to call in on that day as well. So should be some really good dialogue, some good debating on sports. Also, want to make sure you guys do know, through 3 episodes, yes, we've talked primarily on sports, but this show is called For Real Talk with Donnie Stevens, which means there are other things in life we will talk about. Sometimes you do want to stay away from certain topics that are sensitive in America. Obviously, politics and religion are certain things that, everybody has an opinion and a lot of people argue over. So I really won't dig into that, but I also want to dig into some other things. Nothing wrong with having a show about parenting in 2018, how it's different from when our parents parented us, talking about millennials in the workplace, other topics, just how society's changed. We could even talk a little bit about gun control in America, some other issues that everybody is passionate about. So I will be throwing a poll out later as well in upcoming weeks to talk about what topics you would like to talk about, though I will be more than happy and open to discuss other things as well. One other thing we're going to do is Saturday, May 12th, which is the day before May 13th, which is Mother's Day. We will have a special show for you mothers only. There will be no sports talk that day. There will be no other issues. We are just going to focus on mothers, which, hey, Mother's Day to me is a very important day. I know it's a day where we give back and tell our mothers thank you, and our wives that are mothers as well. I've got 6 women that have influenced me and are special to me in my heart that I will give you a quick story on each of them and tell you how they've impacted me and what makes them so special. It'd be great to hear if anybody has any feedback and then wants to share any stories as well about their mothers. So very excited about May 5th, which is the first live show, and then May 12th, which will be the Mother's Day special. So stay tuned for more details on that, and those are going to be some really great shows. So moving forward on part 3, we're going to talk a little bit about Major League Baseball. Let's kind of go through a little recap of what's going on there. Locally, the Texas Rangers, not very good. It saddens me. Obviously, I'm a Ranger fan, but they are struggling. They're young. They're the worst in the West right now, and I don't see them getting any better. Granted, I will say this again, trade Bell, trade. He deserves a chance to be on a winner at the end of his career, and the Rangers aren't getting close to even being a winner. In other news down here in Texas, obviously the Houston Astros, the defending champs, they're off to another good start. They're tied with the Angels right now for first place in the West. That's another topic, too, that we could get into. Me, granted, not being from Texas, being an Oklahoma guy, I root for all Texas teams. But I do know there's some people here that just totally are disgusted that the Houston Astros are so good. The one thing I look at it, too, though, is you got to look at Houston. They have been smart how they ran this organization, how they've got so much young talent right now. Then they were able last year to pick up pieces by getting Verlander. They're going to be good for a while. The one thing that sticks out with me, and maybe y'all can give your insight as well, is how how much are the Texas Rangers missing Nolan Ryan right now? You know, granted, when Nolan was here, we were able to get some free agents like Josh Hamilton. They got Cliff Lee. Went to back-to-back World Series where we ended up losing. But then about a year later, it started unraveling, and John Daniels, the current GM, kind of wanted to do it on his own. He wanted to be like a Theo Epstein or a Brian Cashman and kind of pushed Nolan out a little bit, which me being a great baseball fan and Nolan Ryan's one of the greatest pitchers I've ever seen, um, it was shocking. Because if I'm going to run a franchise, who else would you want to meet players than Nolan Ryan? He's bigger than life. He's a Texas guy. Everybody knows him. Well, Houston, he went to work with them because he played for Houston as well. And he's kind of a consultant, and his son's on the staff as well. And how interesting. He's been gone a few years, and now Houston is the defending World Series champions, and they are looking really good to possibly repeat. Obviously, Nolan did something wrong, and we're on the other side of it, where Texas seems like they're going backwards. But we'll see what happens over the next couple of years. I'm not giving up on John Daniels. I think he's a good young talented GM, but I just think that maybe he shouldn't have pushed Nolan out the door. Curious what your thoughts are as well, especially you local people that live down here in Texas, in the Dallas Metroplex. Some other teams that are really off to a good start, the Boston Red Sox. They're 17-2 right now, and everybody talked about in the East that how good the Yankees are going to be and how they should run away with it. Not so fast, my friend. Boston has got pitching. They've got some defense. They're just off to an awesome start, and right now it's looking like the Yankees. I know it's early. It's very early in the season, but the Yankees might be playing for second place in a wild card. We'll see how it pans out. But Boston is off to a great start. A lot of other teams as well. The Chicago Cubs are off to a good start as well. Houston Nationals are fun to watch. They always have some really good pitching, and they're off to a good start. And like I said, in the West, we got the Angels and we've got the Houston Astros kind of battling it out. So early in the season, a lot of baseball left to be played, but there's some teams kind of distancing themselves right now. Curious to see how the Yankees progress as the season goes on. I know Stanton's still been a hit or miss with the New York fans, and he gets booed. It seems like 2 or 3 times a week. Toughest city in the world, I think, to be an athlete on, especially with the expectations with the Yankee franchise. I mean, they do have 27 World Series titles. I mean, that's just crazy, and everybody knows that they're the most focused team in the Major League Baseball right now. So we're going to roll with my top 5 pitchers of all time. Clarify again, it's 5 pitchers that I've seen since I've been alive. Now, granted, I'm going to give some honorable mention real quick. There are a couple of people. Some of the newer guys, like your Clayton Kershaw, Madison Bumgarner, they're guys that are still currently in their playing right now. So I didn't put them on the top 5 for right now. I'm going to go deep in some history and back to the 80s and the 90s. Those guys will definitely, as time goes on and their playing career comes to an end, they're going to easily be on the top 5 list. Nolan Ryan did make my list. Granted, he won 1 World Series with the Mets his rookie year back in 1969, but I wasn't alive back then, so I didn't get to witness it. Even though he's one of the greatest pitchers of all time, and he didn't make my list. So moving on real quick, I'm going to throw some people out here, and you're probably going to be like, wow, but we're going to go down a trip down memory lane. Number 5 is Jack Morris. Now, if you people don't remember, Jack Morris pitched for the Tigers for a number of years. He also was on the Twins World Series team. I think the thing that stands out to me about Jack Morris is his Game 7 performance in the 91 World Series against the Atlanta Braves. He pitched a complete 10-inning game. They won to win the World Series. The guy was phenomenal. He was clutch. He was big time. He was fun to watch, too. I just always enjoyed watching him pitch. Number 4 is a guy that he didn't have the longevity that he should have, but if you were a Mets fan in the mid-'80s, you'll remember a man by the name of Doc Gooden. He was nasty when he came up in the major leagues. That 86 season when they did win the World Series, he was virtually unhittable. The guy was dominant. He threw very hard, and he also had some nasty off-speed pitches as well. Granted, he got in trouble with some drugs, but then later came back and had a good career with the Yankees and the Indians as well. But I just remember as a child, when I was playing Little League, I always wanted to emulate number 16. I just thought he was overpowering and he was great to watch. So he will be number 4. Number 3 is a lefty that was just as nasty as they could be. They called him the big unit, Randy Johnson. I'm sure most of you guys remember his time. He had the nastiest mullet of all time. He also pitched, he pitched for the Seattle Mariners. Had some really good runs in the regular season, never went deep in the playoffs. Finally, he went to play for the Arizona Diamondbacks, and with that 1-2 punch of him and Curt Schilling, they ended up winning the 0-1 World Series when they beat the Yankees in Game 7, which was possibly one of the greatest World Series of all time. But the big unit, he was nasty. He threw hard. He was intimidating. He was a guy that when he went to the mound, you knew more than likely he had a good chance to win that day. So he's my number 3, which leads me to my number 2 guy, Curt Schilling. Now, Curt Schilling, to me, the first thing you think of when you think of Curt Schilling is the bloody sock. The Red Sox, when they finally broke the curse and won the World Series, the man, he is definitely tough. He showed a lot of toughness to pitch in that series, and he was phenomenal. He was a big-time pitcher. It goes back to when, he played for the Phillies, had a good run, but actually made it to a World Series with them and lost. But then he went to the Diamondbacks and won a World Series in 2001, like I said, with Randy Johnson. Then he went to the Red Sox and had a great few years with them. He won a couple of World Series there, but I always go back to the bloody sock. That's the game that to me defined him. But anytime he came up in a big game in the postseason, it seemed like he always went clutch and, came through. So he's my number 2, which leads me to my number 1. Who do you guys think? People that know me, no doubt about it, Mr. 21 when he played in Boston and Toronto. Number 22, though, Roger Clemens. One of the greatest pitchers of all time. I understand that right now with the steroids and everything that have lingered around him that, hey, he might not ever get in the Hall of Fame. The man had a Hall of Fame career before he even was brought up about in his older age of possibly using steroids. People don't remember, though. The man was dominant in college when he played for Texas. He came up with the Red Sox, and he was just awesome. He would intimidate people. He would go up and in on you. He just was scary. He was hard to hit. He was almost untouchable. Obviously, he broke his heart in '86 when he lost to the Mets in the World Series after the old Buckner through the legs type deal. I think you guys all remember that play. But then, time kind of got past him. Boston moved to a different era and wanted to go away from him. They thought he was washed up. The man went to Toronto. Bam, back-to-back years. Was almost unhittable. Won 2 Cy Youngs. I think the thing that kind of comes back with me with him was when he went back to Boston for the first time, and he just shoved it down Boston's throat. And I believe he had like 21 or 22 strikeouts that game. Just totally dominated them just to let them know, hey, can't believe you passed on me. Then he went on to play with the Yankees, won a couple of World Series with them. I think another play that's always going to be memorable with him was the old broken bat with Mike Piazza in the 2000 World Series when he got mad when a broken piece of the bat came to him, and he looked like he was chunking it at Piazza. Granted, he said, no, he just thought it was a ball at first and then got mad and threw it. Granted, knowing Roger Clemens, the type of pitcher he was, he knew exactly what he was doing. Because there was no coincidence that the rest of that night, he dominated that Mets team, and they went on to win a World Series. Then he came back to Texas and played for the Houston Astros for a few years as well, where him and Andy Pettitte had a good run, and they ended up going to the World Series, but lost to the Chicago White Sox. So Clemens has always been one of my favorite players, and I will always root for him. I'm hoping he gets a shot to get in the Hall of Fame, along with Barry Bonds. Granted, I know there's some cloud around their career. Everybody talks about the steroid era. Well, you know, MLB wasn't really, they weren't sanctioning it like they should back then. And hey, who's to say? I can't judge somebody if they did it or not. Nobody knows. But those two guys, besides the fact Pete Rose as well, I think all three of those guys should be in the Major League Hall of Fame. And hopefully time isn't running out and those guys do get in soon. So that's my top 5 right now. Down the road, we'll bring up some other polls and maybe do top 5 hitters, top 5 fielders, just other things we'll do on this show. It's been a great time talking with you guys today about sports. A lot of exciting things going on. I can't wait to talk to you guys next week. Like I said before, we will be going live on May 5th for a special show on Cinco de Mayo, and then we'll be having the following week a Mother's Day special for all you mothers. In closing today, I just want to leave you guys with one last thing. I'm going to read a quote here from the former First Lady, Barbara Bush, who, like we said earlier, passed away today or this week. She was 92, was married to President Bush for right at 73 years. And her memorial services are today in Houston. Want to be with the Bush family. But in closing, I want to leave you with this quote. You must read to your children, and you must hug your children, and you must love your children. Your success as a family, our success as a society, depends not on what happens in the White House, but on what happens inside your house. Rest in peace, Barbara Bush. Hope you guys all have a great week. Can't wait to see you next week. This is Donnie Stevens for Real Talk with Donnie Stevens. Have a nice day.